Things to do on a rainy Sunday. We have a SEBO X4 Extra automatic upright vacuum cleaner. The casting numbers on the plastic suggest that it was built in 2006 and it has done an awful lot of work. And last weekend I was using it and it made a horrible noise and started smelling of burning, and I thought we maybe better stop using it. Looked online, how do we get this fixed? Is it worth fixing? It turns out, yes it is. And so it's in pieces. And here is the new motor. That's what we're going to be changing. There it goes. Completely brand new. It has done a little bit of rotation work on there because I can see that there's some markings on the com, but the commutator is actually not worn out or anything. It's just got a few rub marks on it where it's been tested, I would hope. Anyway, it's not been somewhere else. Let's hope not. So, parts were about 125 quid. A brand new machine is about 450. Can still buy them. It's German, very reliable. It's done a lot of work, as I say. And now today we're going to try and fit a new motor, and also going to fit some new belts as well, drive belts. Put it back together, and then of course the downside is once I've fixed it I've got to use it, but that's just the way of the world. So let's dive in, have a look at it. Interestingly, the motor is not bolted in at all. It just basically sits in a cradle on what looks like a mat, butts up against this seal here, and if you can see inside the motor, that's where the fan is, if you like. That's the fan in there, which does all the vacuuming, creates the vacuum. And it's as simple as that. It comes out just like that. That is the handle for the, not entirely sure what that does, but anyway, it's on a spring. And these are one of the drive belts here, so we've got to take some of this stuff out so that we can get the drive belt changed. So I'll just do that as we're going along. Okay, this is interesting. I'm not entirely sure how this comes apart. Ah, I see now. So underneath that PC board, we've got another bracket holding the other end of this pulley. So we need to take the screws out from this side. theory, the whole thing should lift out, which indeed it does. And now we need to do the same thing at this end. So much easier when you know how. I'm doing this completely blind. I haven't got a clue. I've got no instructions. Trying to go as steady as I possibly can. So yeah, there we go. One belt out of the way. That's the drive for the roller. Okay. And this side is flexible, so you just bend that in and it drops back down into its little slot, just like that. Here comes my coffee. We've got arches on in the background. Thank you very much. That's one belt in. Now we're going to put this contraption in here. Now this looks quite technical. There's something about this. Clearly it's got some kind of mechanical electro thing going on. It's sort of a spring happening. I don't know. It's a computer controlled vacuum cleaner, so I'm not really sure what any of this stuff does, if I'm honest. But not too worried about it. As long as it works when I've finished, I'm not too worried. So I've just got to get that belt that I've just put in, the front belt, I've got to get that on the sprocket for that end. And I've got to figure out how that goes on there. This is interesting. Where does that go back together then? Okay, I see. So this end is staggered. So this end is not staggered. That end has got two holes are in line. Whereas on this side, we've got a staggered bracket, so that one hole is out here and one hole is further in, and that drops right back down in the bottom of there, so it goes in there somehow like that. But at the same time I've got to put the belt on, and the belt's tight, so it's pulling it every which way except the way I want it to go. So when you're putting that on, make sure, rookie mistake, make sure you put the new belt on, which is that one. Oh dear. Anyway, good job we noticed that before I got it all bolted up. This is a little bit fiddly. There we go, right, I think we're in. That's better. Okay, get a screw in. Number one. As with everything, star pattern, crossways, so everything goes down nice and square. So number one over the far right, this corner here. Number two, opposite diagonal. Number three, right hand side, bottom. Number four, opposite diagonal at the top left. So we've got that one on there. That belt is in place there. We've got this belt on here. That's good. You don't tension them, they are what they are. That actually looks less tension than the original one. Anyway, they've been on there 15 years, 16 years, so best to change them anyway. Good, right. Now, next thing is put the motor back in, and got to get it the right way up, because this part here, this rubber cushion, for want of a better word, there's a certain way around it. Now the cat's having a bit of a squeal as well. So let me just double check how that came out. So it came out with the wires on the top, or the white wire on the top I should say, which is that one. So that's how it's going to go back in. Just check that the orientation of the rubber cushion is the same, which it is. So you can see there it's got some block edges there, but it's not symmetrical, it's not the same on both sides, it's not the same on the front or the back. There's a rubber band around there to cushion the whole thing, and it basically just drops into its little, we'll put the belt on later, basically just drops into its little space, and then the cushion at the other end appears. I think we have to go down square with this, I don't think it'll go in at an angle. Put that in first, I reckon, and then we can squash that in, or push that down in there, so that at some point it will sit flat. It gets there. We've got a cable in the way, that's why that's doing that. It's not quite gone down square just yet. There we go. And that goes on to there. That's very tight. That's interesting. That cable there is very tight. Now the company that supplied us this motor, very good information actually, and some of which, no, this does not look right somehow. I'm going to have to take this out, start again. Might put the old one back in to see how that exactly went back in, because this doesn't seem at all correct. So if we put the old one back just to test what we did. And there is every chance I've got this completely arse about face and totally up the wrong way. But I don't think so. No, we haven't. That is as it should be. But there is a little bracket down in there with a plastic end on it which locates this cushion. And if you get that right, it goes straight in. Look at that. Now it's down where it should be. I always make sure I don't take everything completely to pieces and then have a whole box of bits and then wonder how they all go back together again. I always leave everything available so that I can see exactly what I did and how I did it. Otherwise you end up spending the rest of the day figuring out what the hell went wrong. And that should nestle down in there quite nicely, nice and square. And then maybe now that belt will fit a lot better. I'll have to give that a little bit of help. There we go. Now it's back where it should be. The belt should find its own way, its own space, its own where it needs to be. And what I also need to do is now put this in there, which is this lever here, and it's got a little spring on it, and the spring, there's a hole there for the spring, and then this leg of the spring fits in this slot down here. Okay, fairly straightforward to do. Just got to just be a bit careful we don't break anything. I'm used to handling heavy machinery, cast iron, big heavy bits of metal, not plasticky covers and shrouds and things that easily break. That somehow is how it should be, I think. There we go. The spring basically pulls that lever forward. It looks like it's where it should be, more or less. Yep, there we go. There, right, so PC board back in. Now you've got to be careful with PC boards because they're sensitive to static, so make sure that you've grounded yourself out before you start handling PC boards, otherwise you could end up blowing the chips on the board. And just gently plugging it back in. It's 2 red plugs, tiny little pins. You have to be very careful. I'm not renowned for my very fine work, I have to say. It's not one of my best attributes. However, most things I do does work in the end. So a couple of screws to screw that in, hold it down. Okay, right, now we've got a black and a white wire. These are the mains wires from the mains to the motor. Well, actually the mains comes in to a little PC board. I'll just turn this around so you can see. Take the old motor with us. So in there, the old one has got a plug which is joined together, black and white. You can't get them wrong. However, the new one, black is at the front, white is at the back. The new one, if I just pull this old one off, the new one, 2 separate, so there you can see we've got one plug moulded together, and here we've got 2 separate wires, so you've got to get them right. So as I said, black was at the front, That goes in there. White was at the back. Just spades, they just push on. Make sure they're down nice and tight. There we go. And then they clip in these little wire guides that we've got here, just to hold them down. Stop them from popping out. There we go. Put them underneath. That's it. Okay, here we are. Get them out of the way so they don't get into any problem. So that's the old motor. I don't know if you can see in there. We've got a lot of wear. It's horrible and black, and the brushes are starting to wear out as well. And that's what's causing the problem. So there was a lot of burning smell and a lot of sparking, and the commutator, the copper part, the segments on the motor, on the armature, burnt out and scored, basically worn out, and that's what happens. Modern motors now don't use brushes now, they use brushless, AC brushless motors, so you've got no problems of any arcing and sparking, much more reliable in a way. But then this has lasted quite a long time, it's done a lot of work. So that's for the scrap bin. All we've got to do now is put it all back together. So first things first, I've got a couple of covers. Now I did this last week and I've got to remember what I did. So first thing I've got to do is put this cover back in here. So I'll do that first. That sits down in there somewhere, and that basically keeps that where it should be in there. Let's just double check that's right, just to make sure. Okay, that's better. Now it's in where it should be. Okay, that's good. So make sure that goes correctly. That is also acts as a stop for that lever too, so that's helpful to know. This then goes on top of the motor. Now we've got the wires to think about as well, so let's see how that fits. Oh, I might have to take the PC board off again. Yes, I remember now. Don't think I'll need to unplug it, I just need to screw the screws, take the screws out, just to be able to move it out of the way so I can get the cover back on, get the shroud back on where it needs to be. I'm not entirely sure how these went in, if I'm honest, but still I'll have a go at it. So that must go over there like that, which it does. And the wires, yes, you can see now the wires, there's a slot here. And the wires, remember now, the slot acts as a guide for the wires to go in so that they don't get caught up under the shroud. So they go in there. Two wires go down there. There's a little slot in that plastic shroud there. That drops in there. And that allows us to be able to get the shroud on without trapping the wires underneath it. And then that goes down there nice and flush, which is really good. We've got 4 screws to go in there. There's number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And again, as always, star pattern, diagonals, make sure everything goes down nice and square, keep an eye on it as it's going, just so nothing gets broken and cracked. If you hear a crack, you know you've done it wrong. And of course, by then it's too late. So you need to make sure, as you're tightening it down, it's going down square and it's not actually going to crack and cause you even more problems. So now we can put the PC board back in. Okay, get rid of that, don't need that. That still moves, these move, nothing's trapped. Red plugs are plugged in. The power plug is plugged in on this side, that's all good. Everything's where it should be there. So now we've got to do, this is the filter with a little screen to go with it, with a little foam filter that goes underneath it. But we put the main shroud back on. We've only got 4 screws left, which is good. We've got 2 old belts. We've got the old motor, which sits over there. So now all we need to do is put the shroud back in. Have a look around, make sure we've got it down. It should drop in quite easily, which it does. That's really good. And while we're here, we may as well put the filter in. That goes in there. That goes up that way in there. Clips in there. The filter's done. I'll turn it over now, and we can put in the 4 screws which hold the top shroud to the main casing. 4 screws go in the bottom there. Start all 4 screws, don't do them all up at once. Never do that, because you always end up undoing one because one of them won't start on the thread because it's not quite lined up properly. If you've got all 4 screws started, it makes life a lot easier and it saves you a bit of time too. Just take them down, just keep an eye on what they're doing, and then once you're there, again, diagonally in, make sure they all go nice and square. Yep, that's all good there. And what we are going to do as well, of course we've got bits of thread. Thankfully no human, well not a lot of human hair on this. Don't you just love cleaning the roller brush in a hoover and it's covered with hair. It's still a horrible job, but there's not much on this. It's basically threads from carpets and rugs and such like. Not too bad at all. So we'll just get rid of the worst of that. There we go. That's pretty much it. That's hardly anything there to worry about. So that goes in there. So this now pops in this end here, goes onto the spigot, sits there, and then the other end, the roller end, we've got that fits in. Let's find out where it fits. Oh. Somehow, somewhere. There we go. Clips in there, just like that. There we go, that's the main part of it done. Now, next thing is to put on the handle. This is very easy to do because it basically, there's 2 electrical connections in there which go down into the motor. There's 2 electrical connections in there And effectively what happens is your lever on this side, there's a slot for that to go up into the main body of the hoover where the filter is, or the bag is, sorry. And then the rest of it basically just slots in. It's a very clever design, I have to say, but it is German at the end of the day, so I suppose that helps. Now I've clipped it in and I can't get it out. There's a yellow button on the front here, just here. So, getting it out is a bit of a pain. There we go. Right, start again. So, somehow, somewhere, I'm going to have to get down and have a look. That's better. There we go. Right, that's now in properly. Pick it up. Bottom bit goes up with the top bit. Next thing to do is to try it. But now, of course, now I've fixed it, I've got to use it.